everyone, and welcome to the Huddle. I am so excited to have you here. And this has been in the making for the last, 8 years or so. I have a desire to create a space for the next generation leaders. So we're talking about your Gen Zs and your millennials. So do you know that you get what you want? If you don't get what you want, you have to negotiate it. That is so important. And this is one of the topics that have been selected by one of our Gen Z's panelists. And I'm so excited to have you here with us. We know that negotiating is a skill that can be learned. It's a skill that can be. Happy to have you here with us. Welcome to the Huddle. I would love to introduce you now to my panelists. So I've introduced myself already. I'm a business executive in the insurance industry, and now I am a coach. And I started Clarendon Wallace, the British School of Etiquette, and co-founder of coaching school and leadership development company, ICLI. And I'm so excited to be here with you to share over 30 years of experience and to bring that into the room. Now, Suzanne is such a wonderful person to have on this panel. When I returned to Bermuda about 2 years ago, Suzanne was one of those names that kept coming up as somebody that I should meet. And with the pandemic happening, unfortunately, it took a little bit of time getting in touch with her, but we finally got together for coffee. And I shared with Suzanne my idea about the Huddle, creating a safe space where we can have really informative conversations that can equip our next gen leaders. And I asked her, would you be my next guest, or my first guest, I should say? And her answer was quickly yes. Suzanne is the deputy chair for the Bermuda Business Development Agency, the BDA. Prior to that, Suzanne was in the insurance industry, most recently COO for Liberty, and I'm just so excited to have her. She comes from a broking background as well and does a lot of work in the negotiation space, and I'm just so excited to have her on board. Welcome, Suzanne. Ty is my Gen Z. As we were going through the pandemic, I got an email from Ty that says, "Hi, I'm looking for a job and I do have some spare time. If I can be of any help or support to you, let me know." And immediately I took her up on her offer. And I said, "Ty, I have this concept." It didn't have a name at the time. And I said, it's just a space I want for young people so that they can talk about all the things that are important to them. And she said, "Oh, that would be fantastic." And that was about 2-3 months ago, and we started to work. So Ty has been an incredible support to me as we flush out what has become the Huddle in terms of the concept and in terms of just how it looks and feel. And I'm so excited to have her on board. You can see her bio on screen. It's pretty cool that she has a degree, her master's in cybersecurity, and she has landed a job. So I'm gonna be losing all that wonderful volunteer time. And she is employed at Markel, and I'm so happy to have Ty on board as a part of the Huddle team. Welcome, Ty. Lene has been introduced to me through Ty. So Ty was asked, can you go out and find me another Gen Z or millennial that you think would be brave enough, courageous enough to be a part of this conversation? And Lene was introduced to me. I'm so excited to have her on board. So Lene graduated in 2020, right into the pandemic, sweet spot, and has a degree in hospitality, event management, and tourism. As you know, that particular industry was severely impacted, I should say adversely impacted by the pandemic. So she's doing what many of us have been doing. We have been pivoting. And so Lene is now looking for an opportunity in the insurance reinsurance space. And I think the networking has already started, and I'm pretty confident that she will find something in very short order. So welcome, Lene, and thank you for being so courageous to lend your Gen Z voice to the conversation. Samara, what can I say about Samara? So in the midst of the pandemic, a professional reached out to me from the workforce development department in Bermuda and said, there's this wonderful young lady that I'd like for you to meet. Could you spend some time with her? I'm just coaching her for a few minutes. She's looking for a job, et cetera, et cetera. I said, absolutely. So I met Samara virtually for about 15 or 20 minutes, and we had a very impactful session. We came up with some strategies for her in terms of how she should really start marketing herself and differentiating herself and standing out from the crowd. And I'm just so excited to have her. She has a master's business degree, MBA, and I'm just happy to have her on board. She's now employed at Arthur J. Gallagher in the HR area, so she is in her space. And I am so excited to have her on board and excited for her to share her story. She's actually a millennial. She's on the cusp of a millennial on it and the Gen Z. So we'll keep her on the millennial side. Welcome, Samara, and wonderful to have you here with us. And also I want to say thank you so much to Petra and to my VA Simone, who is helping to make this session go smoothly. So what comes to mind when you think of the word negotiation? It's also in the chat. What comes to mind when you think of the word negotiation? So everyone that's on this call, this is your time to engage with us. Let us know what you're thinking. I know what comes to mind when I think of negotiation. What comes to mind when you think of the word negotiation? We're going to give you a couple of seconds to fill that in. There's the Minty meter there. You can also just press on the link, put the code there, and go ahead and put that in. Let's see what you're thinking, millennials and Gen Zs. What are you thinking? What comes to mind when you think of the word negotiation? I saw the word happy, compromise, reaching a mutual agreement. Thank you, Latonia. Finding even ground. Two parties agreeing on mutually beneficial outcome. That's from LT. Conversation is about reaching a common goal. I love that. Discussing, yes. Coming to a comfortable agreement between two parties. Oh, wow, stressful, yes. I actually cringe sometimes when I think of negotiation. I cringe sometimes. Conflict, stubborn, anxiety. Are you seeing this, Suzanne?
Yes.
Anxiety, yes, lots of anxiety. Ebony, when two parties come together to either create or compete. Jade, compromise. Thank you, Jade. Helpful, hopeful, sorry. Agreement, that word keeps coming up. Agreement, compromise keep coming up. Compromise keep coming up. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And knowing what you bring to the table, RB, knowing what you bring to the table, that is critical. And we're going to talk about that. Anyone else? What comes to mind? So I think for most people, we can see that there's some positive things. Some people say, yes, we get agreement and compromise. But for a lot of people, it brings up stress, right? It brings up anxiety, and you cringe and you feel sometimes inadequate or sometimes feeling not confident. These are some of the feelings that come up when you think about negotiating for yourself. And I'm here to tell you that you are in good company. All these emotions are okay. What we're going to talk about, real talk, is about how do you negotiate in a way that aligns with what is important to you. It aligns with your priorities and it aligns with your values. And it's very important that you get this correct as you begin to develop and to build your career. Why, you may ask? Because if you don't get your base salary right from the beginning, you're forever playing catch up. Your base salary sets the mark for your calculation, for your bonus, and many other benefits. So it's very important that you get that base salary correct. Most people, when they have a misstep in that particular area, the quickest way to correct it is perhaps to leave that company and negotiate the correct salary at another job in order to get the uplift. So you really want to make sure that you're starting out in the right spot, in the right level, not only so that you can be paid what you're worth, but also that you can feel valued for the work and for the outcome that you bring to that organization. So I'm going to turn over now to Suzanne, and I have a question for Suzanne. Because we know a big part about negotiation is really more internal than it is external. So Suzanne, the belief is that most people do not ask for what they are worth or what is important to them because they believe fundamentally that they are not worth it. What are your thoughts around that?
So I have a lot to contribute and say there, especially because certainly I've walked the walk as well. And so I just congratulate everyone for taking the time to invest in yourself today and thinking that this topic is important. And thank you, Lorraine, for having me. You talked about negotiation as a skill. And I think one of the misconceptions is that I'll speak from a standpoint of women, when women see other people do it, or when they see other people take a stage or stand strong behind their convictions or ask and push or negotiate, and they think they just are born with that. They have these skills and they're just so good at it. And that's one of the myths, right? So there's tons of myths behind negotiation. And so a myth is you just naturally have to have these skills. The real truth is you just have to practice. You just have to know, you just have to have the right people, you have to have the right data, and you've got to put it to practice. And then it becomes easier. And so to your very specific question around, I call that the mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you don't feel that you are worthy, then your inclination is to shrink, right? Your inclination is to, a word I use often, is feel very grateful. And gratitude is an amazing thing. I mean, I try to practice gratitude every day. And we should be grateful for lots of things in the world. And I'm going to be very candid on this call and speak my truth. I don't feel that having a job is something you should be grateful for. Having a job is a give and take. And when I think of negotiation and when I do my intense workshop with women, I tell them my truth. And I've gotten to the point now where negotiation for me is a game. And I call it a game of give and take, right? For me, working is a give and take. I am showing up every day. I'm trading in my time and talents for a reward. And that reward is many different things. It can be learning, it can be compensation, it can be promotions, it can be access to information, right? And so I think if you start from a place that you are shrinking, you don't feel worthy, you feel like getting a job, and I get it, right out of college and university, it's scary. When am I going to get employed? What am I going to do for a career? And all of these unknowns. But that is really the beauty of the journey, especially when you're in your 20s. The beauty of the journey is not knowing and trying every step of the way. You're learning something new. You're taking a step in a direction. And so if you come to work or come to a space in anywhere, whether you're negotiating at home with your family, with partners, or with a job, and you don't feel you're worthy, then you're naturally not going to take that first step. And you're going to think of everything as, I should be very grateful. And that's just a very dangerous place to be, because to your point, and stats show, if you do not negotiate your first job, and there's research, and so this is not just Susan's thought, tons of research, I won't bore you on this call, but if you don't negotiate your first job at all, you are literally leaving at a minimum, on average, about $7,000 on the table. If you extrapolate that over your work life, you're leaving about $1 million on the table. So that's real numbers. But I understand where it comes from. I understand it comes from, to your question, mindset and a belief of your worth. I also think it comes from access to information and not understanding what your worth even equates to and what that value is. And so I hope we get into those details today too.
Thank you so much. So many good stuff. Ty, I hope you're dropping a few things in the chat. But, Suzanne, thank you so much for just hitting right on the head around being grateful, that mindset about, I'm just grateful just to have this job. And we certainly appreciate it. The good thing about Suzanne and I is that we've been doing this for a few decades. And so we have a bit of, run on you guys, that we can tell you that it's going to be okay. Okay. We're telling you now, based on our experience, that it's okay for you to go in and to ask for what it is that you're worth. Okay. And the very essence of the huddle is to affirm your worthiness. Okay. We have.
And I
these-
also add, sorry, because I don't want to lose this nugget, and I know we have HR professional on the phone, but I will also say, because I've sat in the seat and call it on the C-suite and behind the curtain, companies expect you to negotiate, right? So when they give you a package, when they give you, this is your base salary, they literally leave room in that number because they expect for you to come back and ask for more. So they're never going to give you the top end of a number, or it, I'm saying never, most companies, right? Because men will come back and they will ask for a bump for no other reason than they've been taught that there is room and space to ask for more, to never leave anything on the table, we call it. And so thank you, Lorraine, for making that point. The expectation is also, right? That's dispelling the myth. The expectation from companies is that if it's 100,000, let me offer them 95 because I know they're going to come back and offer 100. And so we'll eventually get there, right? And so if you don't take the opportunity to make that ask because you're nervous, scared, you don't have access to data or people, you are literally leaving money on the table.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that. So point number one is you are expected to make a counter, not accept the first offer. All right. That's number one. And we, in my household, so I have 2 Gen Zs and I have a millennial. I have 3 young men, and my millennial in the pandemic had negotiated his salary. Okay, it can be done. He stood for about 3 days. I mean, he really stood like, oh my goodness, I should have just taken that number. I was like, no, you got to just hold it. And 3 days, there it was. Okay, so it does work. You have to know what it's worth. And I know it feels uncomfortable if you've never done it before, but like Suzanne says, practice makes better. And you're worth it. You're absolutely worth it. Remember, when you're negotiating, you're not just negotiating for yourself as a 20-year-old or whatever. You're negotiating for your future. You're negotiating for your future family, your future dreams, your future aspirations, the desires that you have, your wants. You're negotiating for that now. And you're the only one that can negotiate for you. No one can represent you, your worth and your value better than you can. Okay? So thank you, Suzanne, for that. So I'm going to ask Samara to come off mute. Samara, Suzanne shared some really good nuggets there. What in particularly resonated with you as you were looking for a job through the pandemic?
Oh my goodness. A few things, to be absolutely honest. So for me, it was about exposure and networking. So that was first. And I do remember having a conversation with you, Lorraine, about utilizing the network that you already have. So I wrote a list of about 10 people that I think everyone knows someone who's working. So write a list of about 10 people that you know and kind of see if they can help you out. It really was that simple. And interestingly enough, someone within my network that I already knew was able to provide me with, the contact that I needed that got me the job that I have right now. So for me, yeah, it was definitely networking and researching the average income of the position that you're aiming for. That was a big thing. So some things that do influence that for me, I think, is location and also experience level. It does, especially if you're, for those of you who are, millennials and Gen Zs and just getting into that professional space, there will be a bit of a difference in salary as opposed to you coming in versus you having a bit more experience. So I think for me that was just something that I needed to do to feel like I belonged. I needed to know what was going on. Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. Feeling like you belong, knowing what's going on, doing the research, like Suzanne said, getting the data and having a good sense of what that range is. What should I be expecting? I will also add that around experience, please guys, you can do volunteer work, you can do internships, internships for free. It doesn't matter what it is. Build up your experience, because that will help you to negotiate from a stronger position, as opposed to just coming in with a university degree. You're coming in with really legitimate experience. Okay, so be really creative around getting that experience and making that experience work for you. That's why internships are so critical to getting your resume to get that nice balance between academia and experience. It really strengthens your position and your value proposition as to why you stand out from the pack and why you should be paid at the top end of the range or even above the range. Okay.
And
Thank
Lorene,
you.
I did just want to say, and in addition to what Suzanne was saying before, I'm an HR professional. I have seen, and it has been mostly males who have come back with a counter, salary, and HR has said, yeah, that's fine. So it happens all the time, people. Know your worth, definitely.
Thank you, but we know that everyone on this call is not going to be doing that. So if we can change that pattern now, where you're going in and you are really negotiating from that first offer and you're countering, then if that's one thing we've accomplished today, then that is success for the huddle. Okay, it's about changing our mindset around our worth, and then that's showing up in the way that we behave and in the way that we pursue the things that are important to us. So Suzanne, I have another question. How do you negotiate when the market value is constantly changing? So for example, today I may look at the data and the data says, my salary should be between, 75,000 and 95,000, but the market is moving. There are things that are happening. There are all these dynamics that are going on that is suggesting perhaps that I can go and ask for more. How confident should I be in relying on that range? And or how do I negotiate when I know that the market is also changing as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I look at that as where am I sourcing my information, right? Where am I getting critical information that's going to allow me to understand my worth, right? And so a point I wanted to make as you were both chatting is we're talking about the first offer, but what I want to let you know is the negotiation never stops. And you may take a pause with that and go, oh no, I thought if I do my first offer, like Lorene said, and never take and always counter and never take the first offer, I'm kind of done and I'm off the hook. The truth and the reality is every review, every promotion, when you go to the bank to get a mortgage, when you're negotiating, your student loans, negotiations are constant and continuous. And so what I say is you might as well get comfortable early, because it's going to be something that you're going to be faced with over and over again. And with that, you're going to have to know the information as you grow and as you gain more experience. And so to your point, there is actual data, right? So there's databases, and it's different whether you're Bermuda, the US, London, right? There's different access points. It's a little harder to get in certain places, but yeah, you can get kind of a ceiling and a floor of what a job should be based on certain set of skills that you have or certain degrees. But there's also informal ways, right? So that's a formal way. A formal way is looking it up online and finding out or asking HR professionals or researching a database. But then there's informal ways like your network, right? We talked about the importance of the network. And so you've got to ask people who maybe have that job currently. And if that's uncomfortable, find someone who used to have that job, who's moved out of that role, right? And so if they're already moved out of that role, they're probably going to be a little bit more comfortable telling you what that role pays, right? Or someone who manages people in that space, right? They'll help you. You will be shocked how much people want to help other people. You just have to ask the question. And so it's kind of the concept of your circle or your tribe, right? Ask other people what they think that role should pay. And then remember, it's not just about a base salary. There's other things you can negotiate. You can negotiate a pension match. You can negotiate getting your healthcare paid for. You can negotiate going back to school and having them pay for additional learning opportunities, a bonus. You can negotiate your start date, right? And so the list is very long. We shouldn't just be talking about, as a compensation package means a lot of things, but really it's about, if I think of it kind of high level, you are again, I go back to giving people your talent and time. And if you literally did an hourly calculation, I think you'd be very surprised at what you'd be settling for when you take the first offer, because no one here, I'm sure, is working 40 hours a week. You're always giving extra. You're thinking about your job on the weekends. You're staying late. You're taking on extra projects. And you want to make sure that you're paid for that. And to your point, as you grow and gain additional skills or work on additional projects, you do have the chance to reset at any point. You don't have to wait for reviews, believe it or not, and say, listen, I have achieved more. I am now working beyond my current scope of employment. I'm working beyond the title that I have. And I've shown you that. You give them real stories. And you then can say, so I'd like to talk to you about how I can advance my compensation. And you talk to them before the review, right? And you do that with access to data points that are formal. You can do that with informal by chatting with people around what they know about that job. And then you do it with, I think, really talking to yourself about, if I'm spending X amount of hours a week, a day, giving to this project, giving to this company. I was an underwriter, you were as well, right? If I'm working to support $100 million book,
Yeah.
I'm valuable. If I'm working to support a $5 million book of business, or a business that is growing by 25%, I need to understand that I'm part of that value. No matter, I don't care whether you answer the phone at the front desk or whether you're settling claims and you're the CEO, right? Everyone provides something that keeps the engine running. And if you know that, and you're talking to yourself about every time, and there are tips and tricks. I'm probably taking up too much time, but you've got to write down all the successes and the wins that you have. Because Lorene, you said it, no one else is going to advocate for you. You are your best advocate. And so when you're in the trenches day to day and you're working, you're just, you're moving on to the next thing. And women do that really well. We are executors, right? We don't self-promote. And so we wait to be recognized. We put our head down. We're told to be grateful. We do all the hard work. We stay late. We volunteer for extra projects. And we naturally expect people to notice that and do right by us and do the right thing. But we're talking about business. We're not talking about church. We're not talking about charity. We're not talking about family. And so you've got to have that list. I call it, your bio, your cheat sheet, your highlight reel. And I think once you know and you write down and you keep track of all the things that you've done without help, without additional resources, you will then feel inspired to go and ask for more money, or go and ask for additional opportunities to learn and have the company pay for that. Whatever that ask is, I think you'll, beyond just market data, you'll be inspired because you understand the value you bring to the table. Hopefully that's helpful.
Oh, that is so helpful. And I really like the brag sheet idea. I did that myself, and I've told my millennial son to do that as well, is to have a spreadsheet, an ongoing spreadsheet where you're actually tracking your wins. Because what happens a lot of time is you get to that conversation around promotion, or that conversation about next level moves, or maybe you want to make a move into another area, and you have forgotten about all the great things that you've done. And if you're forgotten, other people have as well. So it is your responsibility to make your wins a priority, and to highlight that.
Mm-hmm.
Get comfortable promoting yourself so that you can get to the next level. And it's okay to do that. Obviously, there's a great way to do it and a not so great way to do it, but you need to do that. Track your wins. As an underwriter, I would track how many underwriting meetings I did, how many accounts did I bring in, how many broker engagements did I have, how many accounts got quoted, how many accounts that got bound. I mean, I have everything written down. So at any point in time, I can have that conversation with confidence and having my data right at hand. Okay, so that is one of those great tips that you can start doing now in your career. Really valuable, improving your worth to the business. Okay, not just my worth because I said so, but based on data. Thank you so much. Just good stuff, good stuff. Okay, Lene. Now, Lene is in the market, and she is currently looking for a job. And there are many millennials and Gen Zs, and actually and Xers as well, and probably some boomers that are in the market looking for a job, transitioning from one job to the other. Can you tell me a little bit about what that experience has been like? Because as Samara pointed out, your network is critical. I always say your network is your net worth, okay? That's where the most valuable data come is from people that you know. So can you just share with us, what has that process been like for you?
Okay, so something that you guys keep saying that's particularly resonating with me is knowing your worth. So obviously you guys saw in my bio that I started off focusing on like tourism and hospitality, but now I kind of want to get into insurance and reinsurance. And when I started this search, it was like a lot of self-doubt because I'm like, okay, most people my age have had internships within this field. They have experience within this field. So I was doubting myself. I was like, I've never done this before. Would I be able to do it? So then as I started my journey and everything, then the question of salary expectations started to come up. And when that started to come up, I was like, I was really self-doubting myself because I was like, okay, yes, I know I'm capable. I know I have a master's degree. I've done business, but I started to step back and I'm like, okay, well, I can't ask for too much because I'm new. I don't have any experience. And then as I started to like network and speak to more people within the industry, a lot of people that I've known for many, many years and didn't expect them to even be so helpful with this type of stuff, like give me information that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. They spoke to me and they're like, look, this is the numbers you should be looking at. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I'm new to this. Like, I can't be asking for that. They're like, no, this is what you should be looking at. And then they helped me to realize that so much that I've learned over time, even if it wasn't a insurance or reinsurance internship, it's transferable. It's applicable to what I'm doing. They were pointing out like, you know, just talking to me, telling me, okay, well, you did this, you have experience in client services, you have experience in working with databases. And I was like, okay, you know, you're right. And it's definitely gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, this is where I need to be looking. And like you said, if I'm not happy with those numbers, I have room to negotiate because I know what I have to offer. And, you know, so it's definitely been, I graduated at mid last year. So it's definitely been like a learning curve, and I'm slowly starting to like realize my worth and realize, you know, the power of negotiation.
Thank you so much. That was a great summary. Knowing your worth, knowing the power of negotiation, and not being afraid to ask for help. That's a big tip. I want everyone on this call to understand it's a sign of strength to ask for help and to ask for support. It literally is a sign of help. If I had not asked Ty to help me, we would not be sitting here. If I had not asked Suzanne to support me, we would not be sitting here. It just doesn't happen unless you go out and you ask for help. You would be amazed at the people that are out there that are just looking for an opportunity to support you. And I did see a chat just floated up on the screen about where do you go to find data, particularly in Bermuda. Now, we know that the government produced statistics, and I know they may be a bit late, but there is some data there. There is also the PwC report that a lot of employers have that have more current data, but the employers have to pay for that. So be aware that the employers do know the data and they have more data than you do, okay? They have more data than you do. That's why it's so important that you do the research so that you can negotiate from a stronger position. But I believe that the best data comes from your informal means, which is your network. Just generally asking people, what's the current range now for someone with this particular skill set and experience for this position? I do like Suzanne's point about asking someone who may have held that position a few years before, because what I find from my experience is if I go to someone that is in that position and I ask them, oh, what should I be looking for? They're less inclined to tell me. That's the topic for today. If I go to someone that did that position, 3 or 5 years ago, they're more open to giving me the full information. So I do like that strategy. Okay, so in other words, if you're looking for, if you're coming in as an entry level, maybe talk to somebody that was in that position 3 or 5 years ago, and they'll be able to really give you current information around that as well. So I do like that. It helps you get around that uncomfortableness feeling, or that feeling that some people may have, oh, you're my competition, I don't want you to make more money than I make. Also get a good mentor. I have a terrific mentor that is well connected, and I use that resource as well. I ask, I'm looking for this, what should I be looking for? And if she doesn't know, she goes and tap her network in as well and find out, etc. So I think that's the best way. There is always someone out there who knows the real deal of what's going on the ground. Okay, so good stuff, good stuff. How are we on time? Okay, we have 20 minutes left. Okay, so Suzanne, you mentioned about what happened about non-salary benefits. So what happened if you started your career, you negotiated really, really well, and you came in at the top end of the range. So let's say, for argument's sake, the top end of the range is 100,000, and you came in pretty close to that, 99 and change. You've done a really good job all year. You've hit everything out of the park. And now it's time for bonus and salary reviews. And you're being told, well, you know, you're kind of at the top end of the range, so there's not much we can do about that. What would your advice be to that young millennial or Gen Z who find themselves in that wonderful predicament?
Yeah, so that will happen. I mean, if chances are, if you've been in business long enough or in a career long enough, you will get to that point in the conversation. And so, you know, let's take it in twofold. So there are other things you can ask for. We talked about that, right? We talked about, okay, how do I maximize my bonus? Can I get additional vacation times if that's important for you? Can I get an assignment overseas, right? Do I want to get exposure in the US or London, whether that's a week, a month, or, you know, for a year or more? So that's the time to think about other things besides salary. So that aside, there's also, it's a great point to say, well, if I'm maximized at my salary, and I'm the top end in this position, say, let's call it title X, right? I hold this title and I'm at the top end of the range, and I've come to them with all the facts about how well I've performed and all my wins, then it's a great time to say, okay, well, what is next for me, right? What is the next position? What is my, you know, career path in the company, right? This is where you're planting the seed to let them know you want more and you want their help to get there, right? And so it's a great time to say, okay, I understand that. And one of the secret myths is also, you never get rich by just bumping up your salary, right? Salary moves at incremental pace, which is why you have to get it right the first time around. And then it moves in incremental margins, right? 2.5% to 5% is like the average salary base movement year over year. And so it's a great time once you've really killed that position, knocked out of the park, whether you do it in 6 months, a year, 5 years, once you know that you are really maximizing yourself in that position and over contributing, it's time to have a conversation about that next career path. And it's then time to say, how are they going to help you get there? Whether you need mentors in the company, sponsors in the company, additional training, or it's time to look at yourself and say, I've outgrown this position. And if I can't grow into another position within the company, I need to start looking elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So many points, so many points. I've lived through this, so I know exactly what it's like. And guys, this is really, really good stuff. You are getting what we have experienced over, like I said, over decades, and we're summarizing it here. Okay, so this is really, really good stuff. And Ty, thank you so much for putting those nuggets into the chat. Is that in order for you to develop your career in a way that is not just successful, but thriving and sustainable success, there are these moves that you have to make. So Suzanne mentioned some things like, what's my next, what's the next step for me here? Asking for support from your organization. I need a mentor, I need a sponsor. Asking for that next plum move, whether it be an office in London or New York or Chicago, wherever that may be for your organization. Ask for it. You don't get what you don't ask for. Okay, ask for it. I've done that. I remember the first time I went into the chief underwriting officer and mentioned that I would love to work in London. He looked at me and he chuckled. I said, why? He said, but Bermuda is so beautiful. I said, I agree with you. That's why so many expats are here. I would love to work in London. Because there was the belief that people from beautiful islands like Bermuda wouldn't want to go across to the pond. So there are all these other isms and schisms that are going on. So we have to really go for what we want and be very clear about what it is that we want. Okay, So I love that. And also I like the idea about investing in your own development. If you want to pursue that professional designation, or you want to get your master's in a specialized area, these are the things that you can be asking for. And last but not least, if you have outgrown that organization, if they have given you everything that they can, but it is no longer working for you, then it's time for you to start looking elsewhere. And be okay with that. Again, because you know what you're worth and you know what your value is. This is really, really good stuff. Thank you, Suzanne, for sharing that. So you do not get what you want, you get what you negotiate. Okay, very, very important. Okay, so we know that our brain needs new data to create a new future. Okay, I learned that the other day. Our brain needs new data to create a new future, which is why I love being a part of this conversation, because when I hang around young people, I find out all this new stuff and what's going on in their world. So it would be interesting to find out, now that we've moved into this hybrid work environment, remote environment, because I know a lot of you started working for the first time in your pajamas and maybe a t-shirt, flip-flops, sliders, no shoes, no socks, whatever. And you've done it for 2 years. Okay, for 2 years, this is how you have been working. I would be just curious to find out if you could either put that in the chat, or if you feel brave enough to come off speaker and just to share, what is your concern about moving into a hybrid work environment? Go ahead, I think I saw Caleb. Yes, thank you for asking. The question is, now that we're moving more into a hybrid, so you're going to be having a couple of days in the office and a couple of days at home, etc. So you're no longer going to be in your pajamas 5 days a week. What are some of your concerns about moving into a physical office space, especially for those that have been working 100% at home at the beginning of their career? I cannot see the whole room, so I'm kind of relying on. Losing time because of my commute. Yes. Okay. A lot of us has gotten really comfortable just kind of literally rolling out of bed, going down the hallway, and there we are, right? We're right at work. And that's a big part, is around time management, right? That's going to be a challenge. Any other challenge, any other concerns? Ty, what's coming up in the chat? Remember to put in the effort every day. I like that. Okay, every day, remembering to put the effort in. I think coming in a remote environment, maybe mindset has been quite relaxed somewhat. Building relationships with people, that is so, thank you so much for sharing that. Many of the employees that started working remotely did not have the opportunity to be onboarded in person. And so those valuable relationships that we're talking about, that Suzanne and I are talking about, and help you to build those networks that's critical to your career development and success, has been limited and has been limiting as a result of being at home. So that will be a big start. Imagine working for 2 years and you're just meeting someone for the first time. Yes, Elizabeth, no water cooler conversations anymore. Those nice, I used to call it good data. I used to get good data as I'm walking the hallways. I hear what's going on, and that all that information is critical when you're talking about office politics and knowing what the real scuttlebutt is within your organization. So building those critical relationships when you get back into the workplace will have to be a priority for each one of you that may have been working predominantly from home. So I'd love for you to write in the chat, as we're about 10 minutes outside of our time. Can you write in the chat, what has been some of your takeaway based on the conversation that we've had so far? What takeaway can you share in the chat? It would be lovely to see. And I hope you're finding this conversation to be beneficial and helpful. What are some of your takeaways for this session?
Lorraine, I just wanted to interject just really quickly about the, I think Elizabeth put it in the chat and said that so many people, it's difficult to really form these relationships when you're, working from home. And I'm in charge of the onboarding in my organization, and I can say it's been really difficult trying to get everyone involved. Something that I did think of, and I think more and more companies are starting to do this as well. I've created something called like an e-mixer, and so we literally just get everyone on once a week, new starters included, and we just play games. So we're trying, I think companies are trying to think of just more creative ways to get everyone involved and, make sure that these relationships are formed and kind of cemented.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, I see some good takeaways. Remember that you're expected to negotiate. I love that. Remember that you are expected to negotiate. Don't leave anything on the table. Negotiate my worth and getting compensated for it. I like the idea, Suzanne, of actually taking your salary and working it backwards as to how much you're being paid per day and per hour for every hour that you work. I think,
So insightful.
I think I left a lot of money on the table because I was working weekends and picking up the phones at odd times, sometimes on vacation, a deal has to get done, you pop in, you get it done, and you're just doing it as a part of your job, but you're not realizing that you're actually, you're giving your time away.
100%. Well, especially if it's your first job, right? So if you're out of university and you've had internships, your base, and which is why I brought it up, is really from an hourly basis, right? You may have made minimum wage, $10 to $13 an hour. And then you get this job with a package that, is tens of thousands or maybe more. And so it sounds great, right? It sounds like a far cry from the hourly rate. But I will stop the mentees that I have and say, okay, assuming that you're going to be working a minimum of 8-hour days, probably 10, and some weekends, break that out into an hourly rate. Take out your taxes, right? Because now you've got to pay social insurance, pension, payroll, if there's contributions, right? Do the math. And then you see their eyes light up like, wait a minute, that's not a lot of money. And I'm like, right. That's why you got to go back in and ask for more, because what you start with is the base that you have to then try to climb up from.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I just saw a question, Suzanne, in the London market. I know here in Bermuda as well, and it's definitely strong in the London market. They have these graduate programs or these graduate scheme programs, and the salaries are set. So it's 30,000 pounds or 32,000 pounds. So there's no negotiation. You're on this graduate program for like 2 years, and that's it. You get in, obviously you have to do all the interviews, etc., to get in. They're very competitive programs. So one of the questions there was, how do you negotiate in that kind of pre-type program?
So my philosophy is that nothing is fixed, right?
Yes.
And so you may believe it to be a fixed program. And a question I would ask to validate that is to say, can you please tell me that everyone in this graduate program has the exact same salary package that you're offering me? It's just a question, right? Can you help me understand how this works? Does everyone have, no matter where they come from, female, male, I would say these things, right? Whatever university, are they getting the exact same compensation and salary package? The answer then could be yes, fine. Do you realize that some companies will help pay your student loans if you offer to stay there for a longer period of time? So part of it could be, this is great. I'm in London. It's a very expensive market to live in. It's just having a conversation with another human being. And it's, I want to live near the office. My take home is X, less taxes. This is really challenging. And I have student loans. Do you have a program or policy if I work with a company more than a year, 2 years, to help pay for my student loans? The answer could be yes. Don't know until you ask.
Good stuff. So, nothing is fixed. Love that. Nothing is fixed. I like the idea as well about asking to clarify and confirm, or verify and confirm, is everyone getting paid that salary? And I know that there are a lot of not just women on the call, but a lot of minorities are also on this call. And it's very important when you're an underrepresented group that you have the confidence to ask those questions. Okay, it's very important to ask those questions, because you're able to start influencing and changing things as well for your group, for that generation, for that group of individuals that are underrepresented or marginalized. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So don't just accept that, okay, this is just what it is, this is the program, and I just kind of just get in and get on with it.
It is never. It was, I could tell you so many things. They graduate programs, if you're moving back home, they could maybe help pay for your relocation costs. If you're moving from one city to the next, if you're in the US and they're recruiting you to move to New York and you currently live in Florida, there's relocation available. Yeah, you just, again, if you don't know, then you don't even know what to ask for. And so, this is from 25 years of experience, Lorene, and I have had. These are real life things that I've lived through. This is not something I read. This is just every time I learned a bit more, or I asked a question, or someone told me the secrets, I applied that to my next ask, and sometimes I had to make the mistake of not asking and then be really frustrated with myself, not at the organization, not at my peer who made more money, but really frustrated at myself. But you know what? It was a chance to then use that information and make my situation better and make me stronger.
Thank you so much. And thank you. Thank you so much. On that note, as we wrap up, we're learning. We're all learning. And we've all been in a situation where we should have asked for that thing. We should have pushed a little bit harder, but we gave up for whatever reason. And now we are giving you really, really good information. We're sharing with you from our own experiences and trip ups and missteps and information that we've been able to garner. And I'm hoping that you will take this information and you will start applying that as you negotiate for either for that first job, for that next promotion, for that next opportunity, whether you're making a career change, a transition into a new area. Do the homework, get the data, leverage your network, ask for help, okay? Know that you are worth it. You are really, really worth it, and you are valuable, and know what you bring to the table. Collect your brag sheets, get that started. If you haven't started one, get it started, have it handy to remind yourself as well that you are worth it, because sometimes you forget, you get into the grind, okay? As you are working, heads down, but heads up as well. See what's going on around you. Where's the market moving? Where are the opportunities coming from? I need you to be competent, but I also need you to be fully aware of the dynamics that are operating around you. This has been a lovely, lovely conversation. It's a great way to start the huddle. Thank you, Suzanne, for your candid information. And I thank you so much for just being transparent and honest. It was well received. Thank you, Samara, Lene, and Ty, for being a part of the huddle, for being brave and courageous to take this journey with me. Thank you, ICLI, for sponsoring this event, and Simone and Petra for your support. And for everyone that's on this line, please go out and negotiate your worth, because you are worth it. The next huddle will be in May, and it will be about how to build your network strategically and authentically you. How do you build that network that is so vital to your success, but how to build it in a way that is authentic? No pretending to be somebody else, okay? That's going to be the subject of the next huddle in May. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time and for spending an hour investing in yourself. And I know that you're going to grow, and I wish you much success. Take care.
In a million years, this is our